October 1941, Lyon, France. A train pulls silently into the Lyon station. Among the passengers is Virginia Hall. Her fiery red hair, now dyed a muted brown, hides beneath the brim of her modest tweed suit. The station bustles with refugees fleeing northern France, where the Nazi grip is absolute. In Lyon, the southern free zone, their hold is weaker, but the danger is still very real. Plainclothes Gestapo agents are everywhere. Discovery means certain death. Virginia steps off the train and moves swiftly, her head low, aiming for the exit. As she passes the last train car, a tall blonde man catches her eye. Her pace quickens, but she hears footsteps behind her. She can feel his gaze on her back. Is he following her? Is he one of them? Virginia doesn't dare turn around. That would risk everything. Instead, she glances at a station window, pretending to check her reflection. But she's not looking at herself. She's looking for him. Over her shoulder, she spots him in the glass. He's gaining. Then, just as suddenly, he veers off and disappears into the crowd. Maybe he was no one. Or maybe he was a Nazi spy. For now, he's gone. Virginia slips into the busy streets, her heart steady, but her senses heightened. This scare is just one of many. To survive, she must remain alert at every moment. Failure isn't an option. Virginia isn't here for herself alone. She's here for the Allies, for a free France, and for something greater. Her mission has only just begun. Welcome to Veil, the channel uncovering the extraordinary lives of history's hidden heroes. This is the story of the spy who fooled the Nazis. Virginia was the most dangerous spy the Nazis never saw coming. With a wooden leg and unshakable courage, she outwitted Hitler's forces and became the Gestapo's most wanted. Virginia Hall's journey began far from the chaos of war. Born in Baltimore, Maryland in 1906, her life seemed destined for societal norms: marriage, children, and a quiet home. But Virginia was different. She craved freedom, adventure, and purpose. At age 18, she inscribed a Shakespeare paraphrase in her school yearbook: "I must have liberty, with all as large a charter as I please." She wanted more from life than what society prescribed. By 1939, however, Virginia found herself stuck in a frustrating job as a State Department clerk. She had dreamed of becoming a diplomat, crafting foreign policy and influencing the world. But those dreams had been denied 3 times. The first 2 rejections seemed to boil down to her gender. Despite her qualifications, fluency in 5 languages, and a deep knowledge of European politics, she was passed over. At the time, only 6 women held positions in the US diplomatic service out of 15,000 members. The third rejection was the hardest. It came after a hunting accident in 1933 that cost her a leg. Amputees, she was told, could not represent the United States abroad. Diplomats needed to be fit and strong. With her prosthetic leg, Virginia was deemed unfit. Instead of shaping world affairs, she was banished to a quiet consulate in Estonia, filing papers and answering phones. Though the work was tedious, it kept her connected to Europe, a place she loved deeply. Paris, in particular, was her haven of freedom and creativity. But as Virginia sat behind her desk, she read reports of Adolf Hitler's rise. The whispers in the halls turned to murmurs of an inevitable war. Virginia began to wonder, could this war be her chance? If this war came to pass, it could be her chance to escape the monotony of office work and finally do something meaningful. A war this big would need women as well as men. And what could be more important than standing against Hitler's oppressive politics? He sought to chain women to the home, elevate the Aryan race, and crush anyone who didn't fit his twisted vision. For Virginia, who valued freedom above all else, this was a fight she couldn't ignore. So, after 7 years of service, she resigned from the State Department. By September 1st, 1939, Germany had invaded Poland. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war on the Nazis. By October, Virginia was packing her bags in Estonia, heading straight toward the action, her destination, Paris, the beating heart of Allied resistance and Hitler's most prized target. Women weren't allowed to serve in combat, but Virginia wasn't deterred. The French 9th Artillery Regiment was recruiting women to drive ambulances. A war on this scale required everyone to play a role, and Virginia found hers. She didn't mention the prosthetic leg hidden beneath her left pant leg, and the regiment didn't ask. If she could drive, she could help. The regiment trained her for the battlefield with an intense first aid course. Virginia learned to splint broken bones, stop bleeding, administer painkillers, and perform CPR. These skills were critical, but the real lessons would come in the field. By May 6, 1940, Virginia was stationed near Metz, on France's northeastern border. Just 4 days later, on May 10th, the Germans launched a devastating attack through Belgium, just north of her position. Virginia drove tirelessly, ferrying wounded soldiers across dangerous terrain. Sometimes, she used a proper ambulance packed with medical supplies. Inside, the air was stifling, her limbs drenched in sweat as her hands slipped on the steering wheel. The Nazis attacked from every direction, even from the air. Each time Virginia started the engine, she muttered a silent prayer that the vehicle would hold as bombs rained around her. The work was grueling, the danger constant, but she didn't stop. The intensity of the fight didn't last long. By mid-June, France's government had collapsed. Marshal Philippe Pétain, once a World War I hero, took control, but his glory days were long gone. On June 14th, the Nazis entered Paris. Pétain fled south and formed a new government, signing an armistice with Hitler on June 22nd. The agreement split France in two. The north, including Paris, came under direct Nazi occupation, while the southern half was declared a free zone under Pétain's rule. This so-called free zone, headquartered in Vichy, was nothing more than a puppet state obeying Nazi commands. Virginia's unit was demobilized. Her days driving ambulances were over. She lingered in Paris for a time, reconnecting with old friends from her student days. But it didn't take long for her to see the harsh reality. This wasn't peace, it was oppression. The Nazis were arresting and killing anyone who opposed them, from political dissenters to those they deemed socially deviant, including gay people and alcoholics. Virginia couldn't sit idly by. Her fight wasn't over. She needed to reach London, now the center of Allied resistance. The only escape route from France in 1940 was through Spain. So Virginia booked passage on a train, heading south. In Spain, she had a chance encounter with an Englishman named George Bellows. Bellows was part of the British Special Operations Executive, though he didn't reveal this as he struck up a conversation with the tall, sharp-witted American woman. At first, he was intrigued by her presence. Virginia's passion for the war effort and her courage driving ambulances during the German invasion impressed him. But what really caught his attention was her keen mind. Virginia described in meticulous detail the conditions in France. She explained the Nazi arrests in Paris and how they controlled the populace with tactics like strict curfews. She also noted how the so-called Southern Free Zone was crawling with Nazis, hiding in plain sight. As Bellows listened, he decided to take a chance on her. Before they parted, he handed her a slip of paper with a phone number. It belonged to a friend in London, Nicholas Boddington. Bellows framed it as a lighthearted suggestion, someone to call for company. But little did Virginia know, that number would lead her directly into the heart of the French resistance. January 1941, London. After some hesitation, Virginia dialed the number. On the other end, Boddington immediately invited her over for dinner. He had been waiting for her call. Like Bellows, Boddington worked for the British Special Operations Executive, or SOE, specifically its French section. Over dinner, Boddington listened more than he spoke. Virginia was captivating, sharp, eloquent, and full of determination. She spoke of her time in France and her plans to return, eager to do more. She explained how her American nationality provided an edge. Germany and Vichy France were less suspicious of Americans, as the US was still officially neutral. The Nazis would never suspect her of aiding the Allies. That one dinner convinced Boddington. Virginia had the qualities needed to work behind enemy lines. Not everyone at the SOE was convinced. Although the department prided itself on unorthodox methods, It wasn't immune to the era's pervasive sexism. Records show resistance within the agency to the idea of female agents. Some argued that women, if captured, were especially vulnerable to Nazi brutality. Others noted they lacked legal protection under the laws of war, as they weren't classified as combatants. Virginia's gender was again seen as a liability. The past 6 months had been disastrous. They hadn't managed to place a single agent in France. Their mission was to gather intelligence, sabotage Nazi operations, and organize resistance movements. To succeed, they needed skilled operatives, and Virginia was one of their best options. When they offered her a job, she accepted without hesitation. This was nothing like clerking. It was high stakes, meaningful work that could change the course of the war. Training began in April 1941. Virginia learned to pick locks, encrypt messages, and handle a variety of weapons. She practiced spotting and evading surveillance, but her role as a liaison officer was new territory even for the SOE. She would be coordinating efforts between SOE agents and French resistance leaders, a job with no blueprint. She'd have to figure it out on the ground. September 3rd, 1941. Vichy, France. Virginia arrived in the Southern Free Zone as an SOE liaison officer, freshly trained and ready for action. Her mission was to gather intelligence on Nazi activity and the state of France under Petain's puppet government. Vichy, the regime's capital, was hostile to Britain and complicit with the Nazis, making it an ideal base for Virginia's work. Her cover, a journalist for the New York Post. The role allowed her to ask pointed questions without raising suspicion and provided a channel to send intelligence back to SOE headquarters in London. Her articles would serve two purposes. The Post would publish harmless reports, details like daily ration amounts or cafe liquor rules, while the SOE would receive coded information on sensitive topics, such as Nazi supply lines and troop movements. Virginia wasted no time. Within 24 hours of arriving, she was filing reports and establishing contacts in Lyon, 100 miles from Vichy. Virginia had always been adept at forming connections, particularly with men. Back in high school, she'd been nicknamed Donna Juanita, a nod to her charm. Even now, her prosthetic leg didn't hinder her confidence or charisma. She quickly befriended key figures, including Robert Scow, the defense attaché at the American Embassy, and members of the Vichy police force. But her most significant ally was not a man. Suzanne Bertillon, Vichy's chief censor of the foreign press, reviewed all articles written by international correspondents, including Virginia's. Officially, Bertillon was loyal to Petain's government. Unofficially, she was a passionate supporter of Charles de Gaulle and the Free French movement. Virginia sensed a kindred spirit in Bertillon's steely demeanor, but she knew charm wouldn't be enough to win her over. This relationship required trust and friendship. As the only two women in the press corps, Virginia and Bertillon formed a bond. Slowly, Bertillon began to reveal her true sympathies. She despised Petain's collaboration with the Nazis and wanted to fight back. Virginia gave her the opportunity she'd been waiting for. Bertillon reviewed her contacts across France and compiled a list of 90 names: mayors, farmers, industrialists, all loyal to the Free French cause. These individuals had valuable intelligence, the locations of Nazi ammunition depots, troop movements, and even the construction of a submarine base in Marseille. Bertillon introduced Virginia to all of them. Suddenly, Virginia had a network of 90 dedicated informants providing the logistical intelligence the Allies desperately needed. She encrypted the information and sent it back to London. Within weeks of her arrival, Virginia had transformed their understanding of Nazi activities in France. She mapped out how the enemy maintained its supply lines, where their troops were concentrated, and even some of their strategic projects. It was the kind of insight that could turn the tide of war. This success was thanks to Virginia's sharp instincts, quick thinking, and steady composure under pressure. Her ability to gain trust, whether from men or women, quickly became one of the SOE's most valuable assets. They had taken a chance on her, and it was paying off. But danger loomed everywhere in Vichy. Gestapo agents prowled the streets. Even though the city was ostensibly the seat of a free zone, Virginia couldn't ignore the risks. Vichy was a small town. She was the only female member of the press corps. Her bright red hair and slight limp made her easily recognizable, and her knack for uncovering information drew attention. Her warmth and charm made her unforgettable, a double-edged sword in enemy territory. Virginia often felt eyes on her. To prepare for the worst, she carried lethal tablets in her pockets, tiny rubber capsules filled with potassium cyanide. Swallowed whole, they were harmless. Crushed, they became deadly. SOE agents used them for silent assassinations, or, if captured, a swift end to avoid betraying their comrades under torture. She also relied on benzodrine to keep agents alert during grueling missions. For Virginia, vigilance wasn't just a habit, it was a survival skill. Never let your guard down, not for a minute. It wasn't just the Nazis keeping tabs on Virginia. The American ambassador, Fleet Admiral William Leahy, had noticed the girl reporter who spent so much time whispering to his staff. Leahy, focused on maintaining cordial relations with the Vichy government, found her suspicious. The US was trying to support Vichy in the hopes of creating a truly independent free zone, an effort that, in hindsight, would fail. But in 1941, Leahy believed the strategy might work, and Virginia's activities threatened to jeopardize it. Virginia turned on her charm whenever she encountered Leahy, appealing to their shared nationality and flattering his ego. But he remained wary, and his cool demeanor made the Gestapo's watchful eyes feel even more oppressive. The cyanide tablets in her pockets felt heavier with each passing day. Virginia also realized that Vichy's cult of personality around Marshal Pétain made it a challenging place to recruit. The town was steeped in loyalty to Pétain's regime, leaving little room for dissent.